Welcome to Supercool, the show about climate solutions that cut emissions, grow profits, and outperform the status quo. Each week, we talk with the innovators reshaping the modern world through breakthrough technologies, strategies, and business models. This is the rise of the low-carbon economy, a multi-trillion-dollar transformation already underway. I'm your host, Josh Dorfman. If you're enjoying Supercool, please subscribe or leave a review wherever you listen. And if you also want to go even deeper into next-gen climate innovations now scaling, check out our newsletter for weekly climate business briefings. You can find it at getsuper.cool. In the summer of 2021, I was spending a lot of time in fields of industrial hemp across North Carolina. To my untrained eye, the crop looked a lot like marijuana, same recognizable leaf. But that's where the similarities stop. Industrial hemp has about 100 times less THC than the marijuana plant, and I wasn't there looking to get high. I was there to assess and frankly marvel at the plant's height. A hemp crop is something to behold. The plant grows incredibly fast, reaching heights of nearly 20 feet in a matter of months. And the plant's stalk has a storied history that maps to much of American history. You may have heard that the Declaration of Independence was written on hemp paper, and that the Navy, for much of our history, used hemp for anchor ropes because of its strength and durability. But I wasn't in those fields to rekindle the past. I was looking to the future. Nathan Silvernail, Wadatan, and I had just launched Planted, a company with a mission to manufacture carbon-negative building materials. We were searching for a biomass that could grow fast enough to pull carbon dioxide down from the atmosphere, way faster than trees do it, and whose fibers would be strong enough and structural enough to replace wood as lumber. In hemp, we found a lot of answers. And we also met a movement of people across the US and overseas who saw in this plant the potential to build a bio-based economy, one that replaces the high carbon footprint materials still embedded in construction, manufacturing, and consumer goods. Ultimately, Planted selected a different biomass, a perennial grass better suited to our process. But I never stopped thinking about hemp. And the most compelling company leading the way in American hemp today is the one we're talking to on this episode, Hempitecture. Co-founders Maddie Mead and Tommy Gibbons have built the only commercial-scale factory in the U.S. producing building-grade insulation from industrial hemp. From their headquarters in Ketchum, Idaho, they've already delivered product to over 5,000 customers across the U.S. Their hemp-based bat and board insulation competes directly with fiberglass and foam, fitting standard wall cavities inside the walls of homes, boosting energy performance and cutting carbon emissions twice, once during manufacturing, where the hemp stores more carbon than the process emits, and again during use, where better insulation reduces energy over the life of the building. If industrial hemp has a future in U.S. manufacturing, it starts here, with real output, real customers, and a strategy built for scale. Hempitecture has put the logistics and supply chain in place. They've made the product easier to ship, easier to install, and far better to work with. They even built custom software to sell direct to builders or homeowners, bypassing distributors and owning the customer relationship so they can learn faster than the incumbents. And when institutional investors passed on Hempitecture, the company went grassroots, successfully raising millions from thousands of backers through equity crowdfunding. Today, Tommy Gibbons, the company's co-founder and chief innovation officer, joins us to talk through how they did it and what it's going to take to grow even bigger from here. Here's our conversation. Tommy, welcome to Supercool.
Thanks, Josh. Happy to be here.
This must be a very fortuitous time to be a company that's manufacturing in America, I would think, given all of the noise that's happening around our politics today in 2025. Hempitecture, we will get into the mission, what you're doing around carbon negativity, sustainability, ag. But just on that point, how are you feeling today as a company building hemp-based products, sustainable products based in Idaho, given the environment that we find ourselves in?
Is ambivalent a fair answer where there's, I guess, some pros and some cons? I mean, we just paid right before July 4th a pretty big tariff duty on some imported equipment from an international OEM. And I guess that felt patriotic doing that before July 4th. So that's like one reality of our sourcing lifespan is a lot of our material, textile equipment does come from overseas and could be subject to tariffs, stuff that we don't have over here already. But then long term, yeah, the re-emphasis on onshoring American manufacturing is certainly a positive tailwind for us. Insulation in particular doesn't move across borders that often. Roughly 97% of the US insulation market is made domestically in the United States. Sometimes there's ingredients like a polyiso board uses MDI from Asia or from somewhere else, but the broad base of fiberglass, that was coming from within the country already. But there's opportunities for new markets that do cross borders. Think about automotive textiles that are made in Quebec maybe and then come to the United States for assembly, that we do have a chance to intercept for a 2-for-1. Say, hey, we can do this domestically, we can do this sustainably, and who wants to play? So there is a shakeup that could favor an early stage company like us. But so far, it's just been money outflow to customs duties.
Understood. Well, I appreciate the chance to have you on the show. Hempitecture, I've known now for probably almost since the company got started, just being someone who's built a career around sustainability as well. I was so excited. I know it goes back over a decade from the starting point. We've got a lot to get into. We want to talk about funding strategy. We want to talk about logistics. We want to talk about go-to-market, how you're building this company. But take us back, just for our listeners, what is that genesis story? How did Hempitecture get going? How did you come into the company? Let's take it from there.
It's always good to rehash that story because it wasn't like I went to a career services tent and they said, hey, go start a hemp insulation manufacturing business. That's what we want your career to be. It was kind of happenstance and following a lot of breaks and seeing where the tides were flowing that led me here. So my co-founder, Maddie Mead, who you probably know, Hempitecture was born out of a senior thesis at Hobart and William Smith College. He was an architecture major as well as an environmental studies major, and he looked at the different array of building materials and saw what was going on in Europe and saw the potential for bio-based solutions to really gain a following in the United States. And as he looked at different strategies, Wattle and Cobb, Rammed Earth, Adobe, and then Hempcrete at the time, actually, he saw, hey, this is really developed in France and greater Europe. Why is there no industrial hemp industry in the United States? Why are there no industrial hemp building products in the US? This feels like a no-brainer given the ag land resources we have in this country and the historical relationship with industrial hemp fiber being a high utility crop. So he founded Hempitecture after that, and he did a Kickstarter to build a building in Idaho. He came out here not even knowing where Idaho was on a map, but built Idaho Base Camp, which was the largest public use hempcrete building in the United States at the time. And I was working on different things in California. I came with an investment banking background out of college, got interested in startups, did software programming out in California, and then started an ed tech startup with another Princeton alumni my year. And I was actually interested in building something myself. And Maddie was in town giving a presentation about the building he built. This would have been 2017. And I attended the presentation and I saw the vision he had. And I knew what startups took to be successful. And I said, let us combine forces. I've got a finance and marketing and early stage company background. You've got the environmental studies and the architecture background and some positive traction with this business. Let's merge our forces and make these products worldwide. I originally went to him, I said, hey, I want to build a tiny house in Pacifica and live on the beach, and I want to do this sustainably and DIY, so I want to use hempcrete. So it started as me as like a customer, and then it quickly morphed into, okay, I'm going to forget this one little tiny house dream I have as a surf shack. Let's do something that can really change the face of building materials in this country.
Oh, that's fantastic. And just to see where the business is today. And I feel like Hempitecture is one of those brands at this stage in your journey where the brand, I know you're always trying to build brand awareness. It's such a huge part of what every company needs to do. But you have this brand that I think in some respects might even be bigger than the company in terms of the space that it occupies. Being such a leader, I mean, they'll say something very obvious to you. I'm not sure if it's obvious to our listeners. The movement that wants to see hemp succeed in this country is vast and deep and has been there for quite a long time. And I know that because when we started Planted and we were experimenting with hemp, a lot of those like good feelings and vibes kind of flew our way as well. And when I think about it, and this is why I say it, when years ago I worked for Kryptonite bike locks. I don't know if you ever had a Kryptonite bike. They invented the U-shaped bike lock. I worked for them in China, and at the time it was like the most popular bike lock in the world. And everyone thought Kryptonite's this massive, massive company. It wasn't. It was just this like massive, massive brand, and it was a small family business that was successful, but still captured this sort of a different type of cultural presence in America, because when New York was really dangerous, you could use a Kryptonite bike lock and like your bike wouldn't get stolen, and that became front page news, and it had this moment. I feel like your company is, In some respects, I mean, does this make any sense to you, what I'm saying, like how you guys may be seen? And I know you're growing very fast and you've gotten some really great funding and partnerships, but curious how you see that dynamic.
100%. There's a huge zeitgeist around industrial hemp. There's the hempsters, right? The people that are outraged that we've been banning industrial hemp for 80 years. Can't wait to see this come back. And we do catch a lot of interest that way. So I would say I get phone calls or emails saying, hey, I got land in the Hudson River Valley. I want to grow hemp and then turn it into a house of hempcrete. How do I do this? And I mean, I've seen that request like 50 times over. And being first, we are kind of a lightning rod for a lot of inquiries, a lot of interest, a lot of how does this work. That's something that we're happy to carry. We're happy to be the pole bearer of the industry and really set a standard for this fiber and make sure it's being used and regarded in the right ways and with the respect it deserves. But I certainly can sympathize with that. You probably got a lot of those inquiries too, like the Jack Herer type of following that I think he was an author about industrial hemp. And there's people that, they can't get over that Henry Ford made a Model T out of a industrial hemp chassis, I believe it was, or hemp soybean. And they see us being kind of robbed of this bioeconomy by like greater forces, whether it be the DuPonts or William Hearst and yellow journalism. So there's a lot of theory and lore around it. We kind of try and forget the past in some ways. We want to focus on what are the regs for growing this today? What is the acreage for growing this today? What is the yield? What is the cost? And how do we make this a fiber that really can function in our daily lives? So that type of transformation and elevating what industrial hemp is capable of is really important. Because like you said, there's a lot of interest and energy, but there's not a lot of know-how and experience. And so we kind of have to bridge those two things and harness that energy, but elevate the professionalism.
No doubt. I want to get into the supply chain. I want to talk about industrial hemp, but walk me through like where's the company today in terms of the product offering? It looks like it's become a comprehensive insulative approach to the house, anchored in hemp will, but with other products that then support that value proposition. So just talk me through that as a starting point, and then we'll go back into the supply chain and we'll look at the go-to-market and how the business operates.
We make insulation products, energy efficient, easy to install, easy to work with, high-performing insulation materials. So that's cavity bat insulation. Think of a mineral wool or fiberglass substitute, but the fiber is, of course, industrial hemp. We make rigid board continuous insulation, so think of a polyiso board or a cavity rock mineral wool insulation board that goes on the exterior of your house or the interior even to create a monolithic continuous insulation surface. And then we also create other products like carpet underlayment, packaging insulation, bedding insulation products, and those are part of our toll manufacturing business, but those are all real products that come out of our factory in Idaho. When we started this business, we started in the hempcrete sphere because that's what was working in Europe. There's reasons why hempcrete doesn't really have what it needs to succeed in the United States. We're not really a masonry-based construction society. We're a timber frame-based construction society. We don't have a lot of plasters. So there's a couple things that stop hempcrete from being what it was in Europe and the US, but we certainly are a cavity bat and board insulation country. When we started reselling this material in the United States, we took international manufacturing, brought it over, thank goodness there were no tariffs then, and we resold it across the United States. So we got really good at handling the paper on the sale. Like, hey, you want to order this much, here's how we quote you, here's how you see your shipping, here's all the technical data sheets on the product, here's how you talk to your building inspector about it. And the more we began to sell that product, we were like, hey, hempcrete, we kind of need to push aside a little bit. This hemp wool insulation bat is where people see the most enthusiasm. So we said we need to manufacture this in the United States. We're selling to markets like California, and it's coming from whole other countries on the eastern seaboard. And so we started to invest in manufacturing, and we started to raise capital for that. And I'm sure that'll be an exciting part of this conversation as well. But it was really just following the natural evolution of where the demand was and for what products fit with construction in the United States today.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And again, this is how we thought about things at Planted too. When we were trying to get to carbon negative materials, the thought was, where's the market? What's the biggest market if we're going to make something out of grass? That led us to oriented strand board. But the whole thought was, we want to get to as big scale as possible. So we don't want to ask a builder to do something they're not doing today. We want to try and design products that have our values around sustainability, grown in America, et cetera, but make it really easy for a home builder to say yes. It's not going to take more time, and hopefully it's actually going to make the process easier or have other value added. And when I look at hemp wool, what excites me is the core product, like you said. So if I'm building a stick frame house, I can use now a hemp-based product that isn't just doing this thing for the planet. It's not just about this is grown in America, this is about ag, and this is about sequestering carbon. It's all of that, but this is a higher performing product than what someone might be using today. Is that how you try and position the product in market?
In a lot of ways, yes. I think performance on insulation is something that depends on the customer's priorities. Our value is the measuring stick for insulation. I always say it's kind of like height on a dating app for some people. It's all they look at and it's all they care about, but materials have a lot of characteristics beyond that. So thermal mass being one of them, the ability to resist air penetration, how well you fill out that cavity, what your sagging will be over time. The energy efficiency, R 3.7 per inch, is pretty standard in line with what you see in fiberglass. Where I think we shine is one, the ease and speed of install, because this is a product you can actually touch with your hands and has a lot less risk to interact with. Anyone can install it. So you have general laborers on the job site can install it. Homeowners install it. We've had children install it. I mean, children of the parents, obviously supervised. And that really changes your experience with your building materials. I think we look at buildings a lot as like these things we can't touch, kind of like your computer. You can't open them up. But when you put it in parts that you actually can, you really make it much more accessible and potentially more affordable to install. And then the other aspect of performance is really thermal mass. And I think people need to think about how much mass is in their wall, because when you add thermal mass, you add the ability for the insulation to be an energy storage device. And so when you have a hot outside, cold inside, that type of buffer is very important, as well as the hydro and humidity regulation components of hemp wool. So because this is a natural fiber that is really hydrophilic, it has the ability to absorb a fair amount of ambient moisture and then emit that ambient moisture when the discrepancy between inside and outside mediates. So it has a few different ways to make it a really comfortable, really sound attenuating, and really energy efficient component of a larger home.
I'm sure you have customers buying for a whole suite of reasons. It's carbon negative, it's going to sequester carbon, it's going to eliminate the junk basically that we use to insulate our homes today. And when I go up into an attic, and we've bought houses where you just see this, the stuff you guys are replacing, it just drives me nuts, right? Because I just think the builder can tell me whatever he wants about how well this house is built. When I see that in the attic, it's just like, I know that corners were probably cut. This is certainly not the highest quality that this could be. But the thing that struck me was like, okay, so you're playing on this embodied carbon side of the built environment, and people know, okay, 40% of carbon emissions, built environment. So you're playing, whatever that, 10, 11%, whatever it is on the embodied carbon side. And then you're also playing on the operational side as well, if you have a more insulative product that you're actually helping to make buildings become more energy efficient as well. And there's not many products, I don't actually know if there's any other product that can actually lay claim to doing both simultaneously.
Yep. So we're a carbon saver from the embodied, the upfront carbon to create the materials of the product. And then we're a carbon saver for the operations, because you're reducing your overall heating and cooling load for the building. What I think you said is very important is embodied carbon. When you think about the insulation, it's the biggest volume choice you'll likely make for that building. It's an immense amount of material. And so you really want to be thoughtful for where those materials come from. What is the energy and carbon cost of creating those materials? I see so much effort, and you probably see this as well, and I think it's well-intended effort, going at low-carbon steel, low-carbon concrete. Microsoft recently, I think, created their own certification program for those two components because they realize they're going to be such a huge fixture of their data centers, and they want to be low-carbon, so they're trying to source new materials. If you just switch from a polyiso board insulation to our products, or any bio-based insulation solution for that matter, you would save the carbon differential that you get from going normal steel to low carbon steel, or normal concrete to low carbon concrete. So there's so much effort and energy and capital going into how do we solve those difficult to fix emitters. But I think insulation is like one of those sneaky ones people really look over. And like you said, you think you're entering a luxury house, and then you see bare bones fiberglass floating around the attic, and it's like, well, they thought they could hide this between the walls and no one would look, but people that know.
So today, give me a sense of the scale of the business. Do you measure it as how many homes your product's in, or what are the metrics that you look at? Is it revenue? I'm sure it is, all of those, but give me a sense of how big the business is today.
We have over 5,000 customers nationwide that we've served, and we've provided materials for those customers. We do look at revenue. It's just the easiest thing on a month-to-month basis, year-to-year basis to compare. 2024 was an 80% plus year-over-year growth on 2023. 2025 will have similar growth, maybe not to that extent. I think the building market's having a little bit of a coming of age at this point, although we're not really exposed to the greater construction trends because we are at a niche at this point. We sell nationwide. all 48 states. We have shipped up to Alaska. We have gotten stuff to Hawaii as well, although it's not super straightforward. We have warehouses all over the country, and we're looking to manufacture in more places as well. So the grand vision from where we are today, which is one Idaho manufacturing facility using regionally sourced Idaho hemp, is expanding to other regions, the Southeast, the Northeast, and harnessing the industrial hemp industries in those regions to take local fiber and supply local made building materials.
I think it was somewhere in the fall 2024, Hempitecture announced a $8 million plus, was it a grant? Was it a loan from the DOE, US DOE?
Yep, that's exactly what it was. It was part of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law Advanced Energy Manufacturing and Recycling Grant. And so this was funding, and it's a cost share, so it's not the full amount, but we bring private capital to it as well, to build a Southeast manufacturing facility that not only does building materials, but really leans into more end-of-line stuff like automotive, like furnishings, and other textile markets.
Got it. I had read that you had spent a couple of years down in Tennessee working on that. Yeah.
Yes, I did. It's kind of part of the curriculum almost for clean tech entrepreneurs now, because there's so much supporting capital, supporting interests, that we had applied to the Lab Embedded Entrepreneurship Program through the Department of Energy, where they take promising entrepreneurs and startups and help commercialize them and help them conduct research inside the national laboratories. And Oak Ridge National Laboratory has incredible facilities for testing building materials. We're talking heat, air, moisture chambers, where you get to basically say, one side's fiberglass, one side's hemp wool. We're going to line the entire thing up with heat flux meters, temperature sensors, humidity sensors, and then we're going to simulate weather for 45, 60 days and see who comes out ahead, or see which side has more energy moving through it. Me, a little bit of a building science nerd, I loved it. I loved getting in there. And then I also recognized that, hey, that's a region that has a lot of ag potential, a lot of industrial hemp interest. It's actually where industrial hemp was kind of native, early 1900s and before then. Lexington, Kentucky was the capital. So it made sense. Southeast is a nice counter footprint to the Northwest in Idaho. There's a ton of building permits in that belt of the country. So it was very fun to explore there and then really understand that the manufacturing history that's in Northeast Tennessee. We wanted to take advantage of that. And then, of course, that award was connected to regions and districts that were adjacent to coal mining communities that had been recently impacted by a coal closure. That was part of Joe Manchin's sticking point to get through this BIL. I think it was in 2022. And so Tennessee has a lot of ex-coal mining communities. And so there were a lot of great places to choose from to host the manufacturing facility.
Oh, that's awesome. So when you say northeast corner, are we talking Johnson City? Is that Kingsport? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, you know your Rocky Top state. That's pretty good.
I do, man.
There's a couple different locations, so we're still conducting the real estate search. The DOE, with the change of administration, did request more information, a financial assistance update, because they want to make sure that this aligns with this administration's goals. And luckily, I think we do. We're ag-based, we're rural economy manufacturing, we're producing an energy-efficient product, and then we're also helping re-onshore the automotive supply chain. So I think we present a lot of positives that can impact that region quite well. Hopefully they see it the same way.
Wow. I do want to jump into the supply chain, but just talk me through that point on automotive. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what the potential is there?
There's insulation for thermal and acoustic purposes in everybody's cars. The A panels, the B panels. And historically, those products have been made with industrial hemp. In Europe, Porsche, Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes use industrial hemp nonwovens. And it's just a matter of time before I think US manufacturers are looking for lightweighting and decarbonization. So our products, the carbon footprint compared to a mineral-based blend or a straight poly blend is going to be much less. We believe we can get the cost to be less as well. And then when you look at the weight of the materials, they should be very similar, if not in our favor. So we think there's a huge opportunity to kind of do what Europe did. And we're not inventing this from scratch, but saying, hey, you don't have to make insulations only from synthetic fibers. We've got the ability to make just about anything. Here's a thin snapshot of what we do.
Note to our listeners, Tommy is holding up a thin snapshot of insulative produced material that you guys can do. Got it? See it?
Yeah, I remember actually it kind of blew up that, there was, I think it was in the Tesla supply chain. They were like, we wanted to know why we wrapped the batteries in fiberglass. And we went to the battery people and they said it was for fire protection. Then we went to the other people and they said it was for sound attenuation. And they're like, they didn't even realize why it was there. And so non-wovens are all over automobiles and they come in different depths, different densities. And so we feel like we can plug into that market quite well.
That's awesome. Okay, so that's an opportunity that's on the horizon for hemp within the U.S. to start to play a larger role in automobile manufacturing, feed into those supply chains.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk supply chain. I'm sure a lot of our listeners will have questions. Everyone has questions like growing hemp. We had some experience this when we got started with Planted. We were really investigating hemp as our potential input for our boards. As we were doing our investigation, someone said, hey, there's a guy in Kentucky you should call. I can't remember his name. I call this guy in Kentucky. We had this conversation. He says, well, there's a guy if you're in North Carolina. And I lived in the South for a while, so I know thick Southern accents, but this accent was so thick, right? And he's like, you ought to call, like, I couldn't even, it was like Fawn Rascal or something, and I was just like, okay, I'm like, what? He's like, calling it. I think he was on his tractor or something. I'm writing this name down. You call this person, they'll help you out in North Carolina. And so then I'm researching, I get off the phone, and my wife's like, how did it go? I'm like, I got to call this person, like Fawn Rascal or something. And so I'm researching. I can't find this person. Finally, I find someone like Hemp, all these names. Fen Rasco. I don't know if you're...
Does sound familiar. The Rasco sounds familiar.
But the only thing that comes up is that he's like an award-winning painter. And I'm thinking, like, is Fen Rasco this hemp farmer who's cited all these like awards? He's one as a painter. I call this guy up. It is the guy. And we drive out to eastern North Carolina. Wonderful people. And Finn's sitting on the board of the North Carolina Hemp Association at the time. We meet him. I'll get to my point here in just a sec. And he walks me through. They had grown thousands of acres of hemp, not for what we were looking for, not for fiber that we might turn into a board. But the thing that he said to me is like, Josh, we grew it. There was a glut. The market was up. The market was down. We got basically the worst entrepreneurs from Colorado who got priced out of that market or who weren't good enough to be in that market. They came to North Carolina, and we grow stuff. We didn't get paid. And he says, so we got on a plane and we flew to Grand Junction. I'm like, wait, you did what? And I'm looking at it's like the cast of Duck Dynasty, right? I'm brilliant, but I'm like, you guys flew to Grand, like what? And so all of that to say, there's been, not to play up the controversies, that's not my point, but I know the challenges of what it's been like to get an industrial hemp ag supply chain off the ground in America because we looked at it. And that's not why we walked away. I mean, it just wasn't necessarily right for the use case that we were trying to do with our panels. But talk about like being a pioneer and being a pallbearer for this industry. Just that piece I find really impressive. Trying to see this ag supply chain come back in America is not an easy thing. And I know you guys are there with partners, so can you talk me through what your supply chain looks like, how you've grown it, where you think it's going to go, what the potential is moving forward from here? I'd love to hear all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've got a prescient perspective on this just because we are the largest hemp fiber buyer in North America. So we do consume a huge quantity of industrial hemp fiber from farmers and processors inside the United States. And it wasn't always that way. So what you're referring to is kind of the CBD gold rush that went on for a while. I think it was the 2018 Farm Bill that rescheduled industrial hemp from Schedule 1 to maybe Schedule 3, maybe nothing. And that set off a huge amount of people that said, okay, even in the non-marijuana states, we're going to grow CBD. It's going to be this huge medical, huge thing that will provide a huge boon. And I remember going to the State House in Idaho, which Idaho said no hemp for a while. I think it took them 4 years post-2018 to create their own state hemp program and allow this. And they had a famous bust of an Oregon truck driver that was carrying CBD, and they were very strict to enforce the Idaho laws on this drug. And so we went to the State House and they said, hey, there's an acre of land that grows on this side of the river in Oregon. There's an acre of land that grows on this side of the river in Idaho. It's a 3x property difference, and that's because you can't grow hemp in Idaho. And so there was this CBD zeitgeist as well that was pushing forward, like, hey, can't you just use the biomass from all this leftover CBD flower that's being grown for the purpose of creating oils and tinctures and whatnot? Or can you even use the marijuana biomass from California or from Washington State? And the answer is not really. We're looking for a purpose-grown fiber, and the industrial hemp plant is like bamboo. It grows intensely vertically. It competes for sunlight with the surrounding plants. And this is all cannabis sativa, so it's all under the same genus species, are actually grown with a lot more space so that the plant can spend its energy branching out and growing flower. So we're really looking for two different growing situations. And then the THC is the barometer. It's a little bit of an arbitrary number. Hey, how much THC percentage is in that plant? That sort of determines whether it's marijuana or industrial hemp. And that number will likely change in the United States because some farmers who are really just trying to grow industrial hemp fiber, sometimes if you're in the heat of Montana and the plant is stressed, the plant creates that THC for itself. So even though it's 0.5 to 1% and nobody could actually use it or consume it for that purpose, it could be what's considered a hot grow, and you have to burn that entire field and you lose your entire investment. So there is a little bit of ironing out that needs to happen. The overall trend of acreage grown for fiber and grown for grain is trending up in the United States, and the CBD acreage is on the decline. A lot of people got burned in that gold rush. And it sets back a little bit where I think people are kind of skeptical to hear about growing for hemp fiber. But the reality is we have more than enough supply currently. We have worked with 2 processors, one in eastern Idaho, one in Fort Benton, Montana. They are extremely well developed with their farming relationships, and they made the processing investment. So like I said before, when someone's like, hey, can I just drop off a field's worth of hemp and you can turn it into a building material for me and I'll come pick it up and I'll build my house with it? It's like, no, there's a lot of intermediary steps that need to take place from harvest to usable fiber. These companies invested millions of dollars and created the relationships and contracts with the growers, and then we're a buyer of processed hemp fiber from them. In the future, and this is part of what the Tennessee proposal is, we will co-locate that what's called decortication step, where you take the harvest and you strip it of its usable fiber, and the manufacturing, because ultimately there's a lot of energy savings and cost savings to be done from that. So we do want to vertically integrate and become a little bit closer to the supply chain as we move to these other regions and make sure that they can grow and develop with confidence. But that's the current state. There's a little bit of CBD backlash, but there's a lot of promise on the fiber side given the growth and demand we've had.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, CBD. I know I had said THC, but yes, CBD. There you go. Is there more planting taking place? Is there more happening on the farming side to grow out the supply chain? Are the signals there, not just from your business, but from others that are coming, that this is something that farmers are going to, are wanting to invest in, and all those middle layers are investing as well?
It is. Idaho saw 3 years of very consistent growth from 2022. 2025 was basically flat with 2024, so I think we probably reached the right amount for today. And then you have these other states, Montana, South Dakota, the Carolinas, who are growing a lot of fiber as well. And even New York State is growing a fair amount because Cornell is doing some intense testing as part of their ag school on the different seed varieties. So we're very bullish on the ability for industrial hemp to grow. And the good news is, even if it's not being grown today, a farmer really only needs 6 to 8 months notice to procure and plant seed and then have a harvest soon thereafter. So we can ramp up this supply chain. And I think you kind of asked about the yield as well. And that's a very important number, is how much fiber do you get per acre of growth? And that's the beauty of this plant, is you get an intense amount of fiber with relatively limited acreage. So if we were to grow everything just the way we like it for the purpose we use it for, you could probably sustain our entire business on 1,500 acres or 1,000 acres. And yeah, maybe we double and triple and quadruple, but I just read a stat today that 170,000 acres of sugar beets are grown in Idaho alone, and that's like our 8th biggest crop. So I mean, the acreage is there in this country that you can really domesticate your supply, have complete control over the fiber supply, and that's definitely what we intend to do.
Okay, I appreciate you walking me through that. Let's talk about the operations and logistics. So you had mentioned potentially moving to a co-location to kind of bring some of this processing closer to the factory. You have warehouses around the country, so I was looking on your site. You've chosen to run a direct-to-consumer or direct-to-home builder or whatever model, but people can buy product directly off your site. From what I can tell, it doesn't look like you've built out distribution. Maybe you have, but that seems to be a very intentional choice, at least at this stage of the business. So help me understand the logistics, the operations, and that side of how this business is going to market today.
Very savvy observation, Josh, because what we do is absolutely distinct from other building material manufacturers. I don't know how many building material manufacturers you can go to their website and purchase their products. The industry really relies on dealers and distributors, whether it be Home Depot, Beacon, the ProSource guys, and we're disrupting that model a little bit. We kind of look at it like cars, right? Cars used to be sold through dealerships, now they're sold online. And customers tend to know what they want, and we don't want to ship this many times. It's a lot of volume, remember? So if we ship it to your Home Depot distribution center and then they ship it to a local store, and then the local store delivers it to the project, it's like, couldn't that have just gone from our factory to the project? The good news is the way software is advanced is it really can. So we can programmatically understand someone's order, show them a shipping quote, and it's our system on its way to fulfillment. So that was a big tech lift that we invested in. And it was kind of out of necessity. No distributor was coming up to us and saying, hey, we'll buy 55 truckloads of your product to distribute to all our stores. Instead, we had customers saying, hey, we want little bits and pieces and we're located all over the country. What's this shipping cost? I mean, it started with me saying, they're like, hey, I want 5 pallets of hemp wool. Okay, where do you live? Do you have a lift gate or forklift to get it down? Let me get you a shipping quote. Email a broker. What's the shipping quote? Here. Okay, customer, here's the shipping quote, $700 to ship it. Can we try 3 pallets? Broker, switch the quote to 3 pallets. Okay, now it's $400 to ship. This was crazy, but with APIs, you can instantaneously get shipping quotes and show those to customers on an e-commerce platform. Although not through Shopify or not through WooCommerce or Wix or whatever website you use, we had to build a white label website that integrates that. And hopefully competitors aren't listening too closely and won't do the same. But I think it's been a really important, and it helps us learn. If we didn't know who was buying our products or why they were buying our products or how they found out about us, if we kept that distance, I don't think we'd learn as much and be able to sell as much as we do. So I'm glad that we collapsed that space and really can go straight from our factory to maybe one intermediate warehouse and then the customer's job site.
There's obviously a lot of people that have been trying to disintermediate the distribution of building materials. We've seen a bunch of these models where people are trying to create marketplaces, right? I list my product, there's buyers on the other side, and then trying to make a match. I haven't seen any of those really gain traction. I think from my observation, you're coming to market with hemp wool, a hemp-based product. It's new. As you said, there's just the question of, is a distributor going to be interested? Do they think they can sell through? There's so much education involved on the other side. So that's one. 2, as you guys transparently show on your site, you tell me the right way to say it, but it can be more expensive than the insulation you might go buy at Home Depot. And a lot of that still is based on the price of hemp, where I think you say it's about 50% of the cost. So if that's the case, if I'm building this business, I think, is there a way where I can bypass distributors, keep more of the margin myself, or pass this product on to a customer at a lower price where I retain more margin, I don't have to lift the price too much, and I stay competitive? Okay, direct to consumer opens an opportunity for me that otherwise would be more challenging. So here's a challenge. We have this cost structure. We have a market that we have to go educate before we could even tap into a distribution opportunity. If we go invest and do some interesting things, because we can reach a very fragmented market where there is all this customer demand, learn a ton, and grow, and then position ourselves in a much more different way. And it's like taking what might be a disadvantage and then turning it to a business competitive advantage, because now you know your customer is probably better than any of your competitors.
Absolutely. And we did the same thing with our fundraising. It's good because if we had someone who was selling it for us, but they were selling 5 other insulation products, they might not want to push our material. They may not feel comfortable advocating for us because we're new and they don't know much about us. It was a little bit out of necessity, but it's a decision that we made early on that we're really happy we did. And I think we invested in the right place as an early stage building material manufacturer.
Let's talk about that from a fundraising perspective. I've seen your campaigns around crowdfunding. And one of the things when I was reading your most recent campaign, Have You Gone Out to Raise Funds, I thought a couple of things. I thought, one, this seems really smart. If I'm going to put your company in a similar space that Planted occupies, I mean, they're similar. Right? It's not exactly the same. But these are challenging businesses to go raise venture capital for in the first place. The margin structures are different. It's hardware. It's manufacturing. They're just tricky businesses to go try and tap traditional quote-unquote climate tech markets. So that was one where I thought, man, crowdfunding makes a lot of sense. But then 2, gosh, if you crowdfund this thing, you're going to have thousands of evangelists out there for your business. That seems to be really, really smart. And how many other businesses would love to have that? And I thought about it, Tommy, in the context of this moment, when so many clean tech, climate tech, sustainability startups are struggling, trying to raise that seed round, that early round from the venture community. Every industry, if you're not AI, is struggling today. But I know for our industries, right, there's a lot of challenges, getting those early funds in the door. You guys went a different route. So I'm really interested to hear about that choice and how that's worked out for you.
Yeah, it was another choice because you're either in the public sphere doing crowdfunding or you're going the institutional route and keeping all your cards close to your chest. And we've got audited financials out in the open so people can see exactly what we do and how we do it. And you're right, you get an army more or less of people who are financially motivated to push your product and use your product and talk about us. And we've been a grassroots company from the beginning. I actually used to work at Goldman Sachs Syndicate, so I was in charge of doing deals for institutional investors. I was not in charge, I was low on the rung, you can imagine. But it became very clear that there was what we called at that time reverse inquiry. people message us like, hey, are you a penny stock? I think this is the future. How do I invest? How do I buy some of you? Meanwhile, we would talk to institutionals who'd be like, that seems interesting. Glad to have this conversation. That seems really interesting. But it's like they weren't necessarily ready to put the capital in. I think we probably should talk about the climate tech investing ecosystem, because I don't know if it's on the perfect path the way it's going. So we had this reverse inquiry and we said, listen, I think there's a movement here that we can take on. We have a bunch of social media following. We have these people already asking, looking for the opportunity. Let's launch and see what happens. Now you launch with zero. So being at zero is kind of sad and it's a little bit scary. And we didn't know what the uptake would be or the ability to spread this, but it was huge. We were one of the largest equity crowdfunding campaigns during our first launch in 2022. And then we did a really good campaign as well in 2025 that we just closed to purchase some new equipment. So it's been a positive development for us, absolutely. And you get to put all the information out there and then you get to run your business. I'm not having 45-minute combos every day with people reciting the same thing about what is industrial hemp, what are our products sold. It's like the info's out there, read it. If you got more questions, come to us. We did a lot of Q&As and things like that. Because the institutional side is tricky. That climate tech investor, they just finished up a call with a lithium miner, and then they're talking to a windmill optimizer, and then they're talking to a guy who's got an app that makes sure your electric vehicle is charging when it's not peak demand time. And so you're asking someone who's in climate tech investing who probably didn't cut it in software investing 10 years ago, so now they moved on to climate tech investing. And they have to learn so many different domains and have to be experts in those domains. And you can kind of see them just being like, I studied English in college and now I'm talking about hydrogen fuel cells and now I'm talking about industrial hemp installations. Like, who's really going to invest in this stuff? That's not what their mandate is. And especially when you see the companies that, like you said, they're CapEx intensive. They're trying to produce hardware. They're trying to do manufacturing. This is stuff that can't scale overnight and can't see the returns that we saw from 2000 to 2015 for companies that are doing software only. So I think they have to be a little bit reticent to distribute that cash on all these different gambles. And I think for the same reason we talked about at the top of the call, industrial hemp has this grassroots mania about it where people just love this thing so much. I think that's something that kind of scares institutionals a little bit. Like, they have the FOMO, fear of missing out, but they also have the fear of looking stupid, they say. And if at the VC coffee hour they come and say, hey, we put money in this industrial hemp business and they went kerplunk, everyone's gonna be like, yeah, of course they did. What'd you think was gonna happen? So we had a lot of those conversations. I think eventually institutionals will come around and see that bio-based insulation is gonna have a great heyday in the United States, just like it's happening in Europe now. But ultimately, you have to go where the demand for your business is, and it was pretty clear where that was.
That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate you walking me through that. So you've done 2 campaigns?
Correct.
Is this something that you think you'll continue to do as a funding mechanism moving forward?
I don't think so. I think we'll probably be a little bit too big. The cap you can raise is $5 million over a certain amount of time. Our campaign, that had just been increased. I believe it was the 2013 Jobs Act that brought equity crowdfunding to the table, and then something like a year or two before increased the limit from like 1 million to 5 million. That made it actually a bona fide source of being the only capital for a round. Usually people would just be like, all right, we'll take a little bit from the crowd and we'll tack that on to an institutional. Going forward though, and having laid this groundwork, we have 3,000 equity investors. They're all rolled into an SPV, so it's super clean on our cap table, but we have a lot of democratized ownership. I do see it to go to something that maybe is not equity crowdfunding, but maybe is over-the-counter, listing of some sort, and allow a little bit of float out there so our investors can realize their gains and more investors can come in. But it's really not where we're looking first. Our first big move next, providing the private capital, be it, new markets tax credits, bank loans, or an institutional Series A round to match this government capital and really build a cash flowing facility in Tennessee. And that's the good news, is like now at this point that we're cash flowing, we can kind of take our time with where we move next and how fast we want to expand. So that's what we're looking at things. I don't think we would really hop on the crowdfunding platform again, but it's possible. And there's these new iterations that allow it to live on your own website. So you're not actually going through an intermediary. You can kind of bring the intermediary to you. I think it's an exciting space. Like I said, I worked at Goldman Sachs Syndicate, so I'm interested in innovations when it comes to capital raising. And being a public benefit corporation, it just felt like a perfect marriage.
Yeah. And the way that I hear you describing the business is, okay, we did these things in the earlier stages to raise capital. We've got capital coming from the DOE, which is not just about the capital. It is about the vetting. It is about the credibility. It's about the endorsement. Your business, as you mentioned, 5,000 customers. You have this facility operating in Idaho, so first facility up and running. You're going to build it out further. You're going to look at Tennessee. So the next phase is, in some sense, it's like you guys have actually gotten through the valley of death, so to speak. You've crossed that chasm where now there's more opportunities open up, more financial opportunity opens up to take this business to the next level with bigger partners. I mean, sounds like getting into automotive sounds like that could be just a fantastic business opportunity if you guys can make that happen.
Absolutely. It's much better margin than aerospace is right there next to it, right? All those airplane cabins or eVTOL cabins also need light insulating thermally and acoustically materials. So I do think we can go up from here and we can grow. We do need to make investments in equipment that allows us to do this and allows us to produce this material in different parts of the country. I think we were talking about the margin and distribution, selling to Florida, but shipping from Idaho. We have the same retail price nationwide, but our margins look very different based on where that sale is. So it is about getting to a regional manufacturing model where we can then scale from.
Staying on this point, Tommy, you guys start in home building, you start with insulation for homes. That's a massive market. Now you start to look at these other markets where there is need for insulation, which if you had said to me, as I'm thinking about it, the average layperson doesn't think, oh, insulation, oh yeah, homes, but auto, aerospace. There are these gigantic opportunities for a company like that. Does the mission evolve? Does the vision of what you can be grow bigger, or has it stayed the same as you see more and more opportunity beyond the home building space of markets you can serve?
It does. Our goal as a startup and a small team with a big impact is stay tight, stay focused on what we can do, but be cognizant of where the opportunities are. Because the same reason that a building home would want to use our product because it's installer friendly, relatively low cost on the sustainability options, and then it's high performing. All these other industries, whether it's IKEA for seat cushions or a Boeing cabin insulation, or it's a Ford motor vehicle or Rivian motor vehicle, they are all potential customers as well. But we don't want to get out and say, hey, we're going to do everything for everybody and serve no one. We need to serve the people who we can serve today quite well, and then allow that growth to happen incrementally. There's been another company in our space who's raised a ton of capital, set out to do the moon and the stars in bio-based insulation, and then has now filed Chapter 11. So there's ways that I think you can grow a little bit too fast when you're in that CapEx and hardware space. And so we're trying to really stay in our lane and grow intelligently to the next adjacent product.
Tommy, thank you so much for spending some time with me today and walking me through the business. As I said at the outset, I've been following along since close to the founding, I would imagine, when I first heard the story, and to hear where you guys are today, how you're thinking about the business, the potential that's ahead of you, it's just incredibly inspiring. So congratulations, wishing you continued success, excited to follow the journey from here.
I could tell from when I met you at Greenbuild and went right up to you were an authentic and awesome guy. So this isn't just a persona he's got on the podcast. Josh is a great guy who really knows the industry, really cares about this, and can't wait to listen to this on replay.